You are now watching Zach Lesage, the best place to learn about competitive Pokemon TCG. Let's get it! Yo, what's poppin' peeps? Welcome back to the channel. Zach Lesage here. We are going to be going over the last 11 through 20 top decks in the Fusion Strike format. And we've had a lot of really cool decks that have been making the top 20 these past few weeks. New cards such as Leafeon V have kind of popped up here and there, and I'm sure there's got to be some featured in the list. It's one of those things where these kind of decks that fall outside of the top 10 quite often have a lot of potential, but fall a little bit short due to oppressive top decks in the format such as Mew, Jolteon, and Gengar. So if you haven't watched the top 10 video from yesterday, I do this every single Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Check that out, and check out these videos to see exactly what else is in the surrounding metagame. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up. It helps boost the YouTube algorithm to get more people to watch this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. We just passed 9,700 subs. We're about 300 away from 10K. Let's get it! And let me know in the comments what decks you think are going to be making the top 20 decks this week. There's a lot of ground to cover, so we will be jumping into our top 20. I'm excited. Let's get it. Breezing into number 20 and not making the list last week is Leafeon VMAX, Leafeon V, and Galarian Moltres. So I've seen this deck pop up at a few events, and the whole idea is to basically be a normal Leafeon VMAX deck, but you have Galarian Moltres to deal with the Mew VMAX matchup due to weakness. Leafeon VMAX just got Leafeon V, which allows you to kind of gust up whatever you want with its V ability. Yes, V are in PTCGO already, ahead of the Brilliant Stars release as promos, kind of to test the waters with what's going on with the V abilities and attacks and stuff like that. Leafeon VMAX does use Grass Knot with Galar Mine. That's the general strategy. I mean, this deck to me seems like the same thing as Rapid Strike Urshifu with Galarian Moltres. I'm not necessarily a fan of just sandwiching two separate concepts together and hoping that it works. I think there's much better counterbox options. Considering Leafeon VMAX, I don't think it necessarily solves anything in the format. It's just a poorly positioned, otherwise fine deck that just doesn't hold its own. That being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with this deck. I also just don't necessarily think there's anything right with this deck. For the rest of the Fusion Strike format, I would probably only be playing Mew VMAX, Dark Box, Gengar VMAX, or Jolteon VMAX going forward. If you're playing anything else, realize that it is a metagame call, especially when it comes to larger events. For Brilliant Stars format, I don't necessarily think this deck is going to hold its own, so we'll have to see. All of these lists are available in the pinned comment and reference videos for most of them. I don't have a reference video for this one, but I think you can kind of look at the Leafeon VMAX video that I just recently covered and check that out and just add some Galarian Moltres, and that's really it. So let's see what's going on with number 19. Tumbling all the way into number 19 and falling a steep fall for number 6 last week is Stonjourner VMAX. This deck is all about healing and doing some minimal damage, very similar to a Duraludon or a Metagross VMAX deck, whereas this one does not necessarily seem to peak as high as the others. I think this deck was discovered and did very well at the GG Tour tournament with Vinny Fernandez, and then kind of fell off as players started countering it. I mean, it's not bad. I totally like playing this deck, but it is a little bit bricky in best of one, and it can just fold to some random matchups. So it's one of those things. I don't necessarily think this deck is going to continue to see success. It might be in the bottom half of our top 20, but I don't necessarily see it going forward and having a great time in our Brilliant Stars format or for the rest of the Fusion Strike format. However, if you are looking to have fun, this is definitely a great deck choice for that. If you're trying to pick up any of the codes to build this deck or any of the decks in their Brilliant Stars format, by all means go to PTCGOstore.com, plug in code ZLesage5, you'll find that discount code in the description, and you could kind of get ahead with some PTCGO cards, whether for PTCG Live or PTCGO. It's a great way to help support the content that you see here. Beaming into number 18 and dropping from number 17 last week is Metagross VMAX. Now, I already brought it up a little bit with Stonjourner that these decks are all very similar. They're these healing tanky decks where you're trying to heal, and then once you're able to kind of attack or you kind of met some kind of condition, you're able to go ahead and attack going forward. I think that this build's all right, and I think I actually like Stonjourner better. The fact that this one did slightly better by a spot or two doesn't really change too much. I think the end goal here is playing Duraludon VMAX, because Duraludon VMAX does have a better matchup spread than this deck. This deck really kind of popped off after Grant Manley did well at a tournament, Cal Connor won a tournament after that, and then kind of fizzled out. Metagross isn't bad, I just don't necessarily think it's well positioned going forward for this or for the rest of the Fusion Strike format, or going forward with Brilliant Stars. Splashing into number 17 and going up from 19 last week is Inteleon VMAX with the 1/1 Rapid Strike Urshifu line. I think a lot of players like Inteleon VMAX because you can go with the Rapid Strike energy, lift back that energy, just continuously search you up with Octillery, heal with that Cheryl after you have 0 energies, and Rapid Strike somewhat solves the issue of our Jolteon VMAX matchup. Now, to me, I think that this is a deck that struggles in best of 1, and I think there's just probably better decks to be playing than this deck entirely. That being said, it's alright. I don't know what else to put. Like, I know there's some people that love this deck. I'm not a huge fan of playing this deck. I mean, I do like playing this deck. I'm not a huge fan of this deck competitively, so I don't necessarily think it's a strong call going forward, nor do I think it's going to gain too much coming from our Brilliant Stars set list. I could be proven wrong with that. I haven't necessarily thought about Inteleon VMAX in Brilliant Stars, but if you are a fan of this deck, feel free to let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Spearing all the way into number 16 and dropping from number 11 last week is Galarian Sirfetch'd V with Galarian Moltres. Now, very similar to the Dark Box deck that features Galarian Moltres and Sableye, this deck seems to be a dark and fighting version of that. And personally, I like this deck better than I like Dark Box in our current format. However, going forward, I do like Dark Box a little bit more. This deck is all aiming towards doing the same thing. You're dropping Zapdos down, accelerating energies with its ability, then you're gusting in with Sirfetch'd to attack against Jolteon VMAX, Gengar VMAX, etc. And you have Galarian Moltres after you sacrificed a few prize cards to knock out things such as Mew VMAX. I think this deck's alright. It's one of those things where it does have its own inconsistency issues. Part of me feels like enough people just aren't really playing this deck to success, and that's really where it's at. It's hard to pilot, it does suffer some random matchups, and enough isn't really known about this deck. So while I do think this deck is a fine choice for the remaining week of Fusion Strike formats, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be able to hold its own in our next formats. However, there is some promising notes where Arceus V-Star is weak to fighting, and this might help this out a little bit. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure, so it's something that we'll have to see how the format evolves as we get Brilliant Stars decks into PTCGO. Bruising to number 15 and up from number 16 last week is Leafeon VMAX with Leafeon V-Star. Now, we already saw a Leafeon variant at number 20 with Leafeon Moltres. This is the same strategy except it doesn't play Moltres, and it kind of goes with my strategy of, or my idea of, if you're playing a more basic, streamlined version of a deck, you're probably going to see a little bit more success with it. So without Galarian Moltres cluttering up matchups, yep, you're going to lose to Jolteon, yep, you're going to lose to Mew, but you do have access to an otherwise fully capable deck that can hold its own against a decent portion of the metagame. This deck isn't really well positioned in the metagame, but it's fine enough of a choice that I would recommend playing this deck, or at least giving it a try, or at least picking up the Leafeon V-Stars online, because they are a brand new promo card. While I don't necessarily think this is a great choice for the remaining week of Fusion Strike, because our top decks pretty much beat this deck, even Gengar and Dark Toolbox can smoke this deck out of the water. If you're going to lose to the top 4, probably not the best choice. Maybe Leafeon V-Star does change up to the metagame, because there might be some decks that counter Mew or Jolteon out of the format, or at least there is that possibility. So we'll have to see how it plays out going forward, but there might be hope if you are a Leafeon fan. Splashing into number 14, and not even on the list last week, is Suicune with Crushing Hammer and Path to the Peak. Now, this deck to me seems very similar to Ice Rider with Crushing Hammer or Fan of Waves and Path to the Peak. And to me, yeah, I think it's almost exactly the same deck, where we're giving up on Max Lance and Ride of the High King. We do get Blizzard Rondo, and we are a basic Pokemon instead of a VMAX Pokemon. That being said, you do get more room for Crushing Hammer, and it can be effective. I do think this deck struggles against Jolteon and quite a other few decks in the metagame. So if Path sticks, that's cool. You might be able to beat Mew here and there, but I think that this is just largely a worse version of Ice Rider, and it's largely performed worse than Ice Rider in general. So while I think that the metagame is fine to play this deck and it's more of a neutral choice, there's probably better neutral choices to play that actually made our top 10. That's no shade against anyone who's playing this deck or any shade against this deck. I think you can play it, pop up, and it will do well. It's consistent, it's vicious enough. But I think you're really gaining off the strength of Path to the Peak and Crushing Hammer more than you are of Suicune. And I think that's the reason why Suicune is just continuously not making our top 10s anymore. Going forward, players might want to experiment with Raikou V or Entei V, which are spiritually the same, while having Burning Rondo, or it's all the same kind of thing as Suicune V, exact same typing and stuff, or just different typing and stuff. So that might be a spiritual way to play these decks, but we'll have to see how it plays out once we get to a format next week with Brilliant Stars. Splashing in again at number 13 with another Suicune deck. This time is Suicune Ludicolo. So the same thing of just kind of building up a large bench and hitting hard with Suicune is going to be amplified with Ludicolo's Enthusiastic Dance. As you can see, this one made top 20 last week. I mean, literally his 20th, shows that this deck is alright. I mean, a few players have played this, and some swear by its VMAX's matchup or other matchups. I think it still struggles against Jolteon and other top decks in the formats. It's a deck that fell out of the top 20 for the longest time until Kim Pobega brought it back at the late night regional championships. So it is one of those things. I think that Suicune's just not really well equipped for our format. It's not like it's necessarily doing bad, but I do think that it could be doing a little bit better than what we're seeing right now. Going forward, I don't necessarily see how Suicune Ludicolo is going to pull it off, but it could be okay. I mean, maybe if Jolteon does get hit hard with Manaphy, this deck might have the opportunity to succeed. That's how we're going to have to see, but right now it's just, again, most decks in the top 20 stay in the top 20, and those are really metagame choices, if anything. Bringing it up all the way to number 12 and dropping a few spots from number 9 last week is Victini VMAX. This is a deck that I see pretty much Lee Bui plays all the time, and they continuously see success with it, but again, I think it's one of these decks that heavily relies on Crushing Hammer, Fan of Waves, and Path to the Peak to really see success, and Victini VMAX is merely a vessel of that. Now, the whole strategy is really max victory, again with aggressive cards such as Catcher, Boss, all that stuff, to really run your opponent out of games before they have the opportunity to get set up. We see a lot of that. Decks like Jolteon VMAX seem to do a little bit better with Path to the Peak and Marnie than Victini VMAX. The reason why that they're number 2 in format compared to number 9 or 12 or anything else like that. Now, Victini VMAX does have a chance going forward. I think that Magma Basin, Kindler, etc. are all really interesting cards to add into this deck as we kind of go forward. But it's one of those things where for Fusion Strike, this deck's alright. I don't really see a problem with it. You just gotta kind of run a little bit lucky and maybe get a few Crushing Hammer heads along the way to see success with this deck. Rapid Striking it up at number 11 and not making the list last week is Rapid Strike Malamar. Now, this single prize card deck kind of pops up whenever it likes and sees a decent bit of success because it is a pretty powerful deck, although it is a little bit inconsistent. You're trying to throw away some Rapid Strike Pokemon from your hands in order to do a lot of damage, and that's why you play a lot of Rapid Strike cards in the way that you have it. I think a lot of players playing this deck might be getting ready for Brilliant Stars. I've been playing this deck in the Brilliant Stars format because you do get the new Cynthia card that allows you, if one of your Pokemon gets knocked out, you can draw up to 8 cards in your hand. There's some other cool things that decks get from Brilliant Stars. I think we've kind of gone over that in a lot of formats, but I do think that Malamar is one of those decks that does gain that supporter card that's going to be huge for it going forward. So maybe it's just some players testing. I know a lot of players have been playing Durant and some similar decks that might be coming out during our Brilliant Stars format. So I think this is an alright play going forward as a single prize card deck. I do think that Dark Box, even though that does play Sableye V, is a better choice for a single prize card-esque deck right now, and likely with Brilliant Stars. However, this deck with Brilliant Stars does get much better, and it's one of my personal top decks going forward. So you want to kind of think about it like that. We're so close to Brilliant Stars, maybe give this deck a try, understand how it works out. I do have a video in the pinned comments, again, with all the lists, and you can kind of learn what's going on with this deck if you want to. And that's what we got going on for this video today, peeps. Hopefully you enjoyed watching these decks, and I mean, who wouldn't love seeing Malamar in our 11th spot? It's so close to top 10, and I think this deck gets even better in our Brilliant Stars format. There's so many cool things going on. Like I said, this is last week that we have a Fusion Strike. We will be moving on to Brilliant Stars starting next week, so let me know what kind of content you want to be seeing in the comments below. If you haven't already, pick up some Brilliant Stars codes. You can go to PTCGO plug in code Lesage5. That link is in the description. You could also go ahead and pick up some coaching from me at metafy.gg/@ZachLesage. I have so many Brilliant Stars decks that I've been covering in the format that I'm really willing and ready to help anyone kind of grow as they're preparing for Salt Lake City regionals, any international regionals or events, and just kind of anything else that's going on. Maybe it's my late night series or anything else like that. So I hope everyone's enjoyed watching this video. As always, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. The pinned comments have all the deck lists, all that great stuff. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch up with everyone later. Hopefully we can cover some PTCG Live beta content today, but we'll have to see how that goes. Peace out and have a great one. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. It means the world to me. And my goal with this channel is to spread my love of the game and knowledge with our entire Pokemon TCG community. If you haven't already, help signal boost this video to other Pokemon TCG fans by liking it, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel. Hopefully we reach our goals really soon. Check out this recommended video and have yourself a great day. Thanks.